So I know a few of you out there are Applejack fans.
Yep.
I know a lot more of you are of the opinion that Applejack is best background pony. And who can blame you for saying that? It's been 2 seasons and AJ really hasn't done all that much. What the buck's going on? She's supposedly a main character, right? I mean, she's in the theme song. So where's all the AJ love? Are the writers just stupid? Did they not like Southerners? Well, what if I told you that the actual reason AJ has effectively done nothing for 2 full seasons is because her character, in its present state, was exhausted almost immediately after the beginning of Season 1? Don't believe me? Well, I guess I'll just have to prove it to you. So let's get started, shall we? Let's examine why Applejack gets no love. Now, I know what a lot of you are probably thinking. Applejack has made tons of appearances and has done a bunch of episodes. How can you or anyone say she hasn't done anything? Well, in order to answer that, one would have to first identify what a truly effective appearance in Friendship is Magic, or any work of character-driven fiction for that matter, actually constitutes. So let's go ahead and do that. Number 1. The episode's focus must primarily remain on the character in question. Number 2. The character in question must be presented with some sort of conflict. This can be from an external source, like an enemy, a natural event, etc., or something internal, such as emotional struggling. The point is that there is some sort of obstacle preventing the character from reaching their goal without issue. And finally, number 3. Upon trials and tribulations, the character must overcome the established obstacle, emerging from the struggle stronger for doing so, and or having come to some sort of realization that they previously lacked. Now, with these criteria in mind, I can safely say that out of all of Applejack's appearances, only once do her episodes meet all 3 goals successfully. Want me to prove it? Let's go through all of her major appearances one at a time and critique them. If you were wondering how long you would have to wait to find the one appearance where Applejack actually worked as a character, well, we're starting off good. Applebuck season successfully meets all 3 goals that a character-driven story should achieve. The episode focuses primarily on Applejack. It opens with her and Big Mac on the farm, and whether she's bucking in the fields or attempting to squeeze in helping her friends with their troubles, the narrative rarely leaves her side, allowing us to experience her conflict in its entirety. Speaking of conflict, it actually gives her a conflict, having to balance doing all of the work on Sweet Apple Acres while still helping out all of her friends, despite the fact she's really too exhausted to do either one of them. There's also the internal conflict for desire to ask her friends for help, versus her pride of wanting to prove to herself she can actually handle everything alone. And finally, the resolution of the conflict allows AJ to grow as a character, as she learns that accepting help from those you hold dear isn't something to be ashamed of. We're introduced to the central character and their problems early on, privy to watching the entirety of the conflict unfold, and see the character triumph and grow from the resolution. Flawless character development. And here is Applejack's second best outing. In all honesty, the only thing holding back Look Before You Sleep as the second effective Applejack episode is the fact she co-stars in it with Rarity and Twilight, and that the conflict affects Rarity as well. But it's really just a technicality when you think about it. AJ is in the spotlight the whole time along with Rarity and Twilight. She's presented with the conflict of dealing with Rarity's obsession with intimate details, and grows as a character by learning that not only does Rarity's behavior have its place, but her brashness could stand to be tempered as well. Rarity also learns the same thing about herself and Applejack, and thus the episode works well for both characters. This episode comes close to being an Applejack episode, but misses one large point. Like Look Before You Sleep, AJ is a co-star, which in and of itself isn't a deal breaker. Applejack is still front and center with Rainbow Dash almost the entire time, and we never feel like we're missing part of her role in the events of the episode. We're also given a character versus character conflict of Applejack competing against Rainbow Dash in the big race. The biggest issue of this episode comes in the resolution. Rainbow Dash learns better than to resort to cheating to prove your athletic ability. And while AJ did end up bending the rules herself, she already knew that it was wrong to do so, and actively took a stance against cheating in the beginning of the episode. She only started playing dirty in retaliation to Dash, and wouldn't have done so at all if Rainbow Dash had played by the rules. If a character is already aware of the resolution to the conflict before it even begins, then they cannot grow as a character from that episode, and therefore the story cannot truly be considered to have affected them. This episode's conflict involves not only the entirety of the main cast, but also the entirety of the secondary characters introduced in the episode. It's less of a character versus character conflict as it is a clashing of ideologies, with all the characters choosing a side. Despite the setting and opening scene, if Applejack isn't the center of attention and the main character growing as a result of the conflict, it can't really be considered her story. This episode fails to be a true Applejack episode because the conflict in the episode has nothing to do with her. The characters in conflict are Rarity and Sweetie Belle, and while AJ has a prominent role, her purpose is more to provide words of wisdom to those that are struggling. If Applejack's the one providing solutions to the problem and not the one struggling to overcome them, then the story certainly doesn't revolve around her.
Dear Princess Celestia, I wanted to share my thoughts with you. Ahem. I didn't learn anything. I was right all along.
Not much to say here. Ignoring the fact that AJ, and every pony else, was outshined by the whole Derpy fiasco, both the christening and subsequent censoring,
I just don't know what went wrong.
this episode fails to truly be an Applejack episode simply because we are rarely with Applejack. She disappears for about half the episode, and it's during that time that the entirety of the conflict AJ faces takes place, so we as an audience never see it happen. This was done on purpose to have the audience wonder along with the rest of the cast what happened to Applejack while she was gone. The inevitable side effect is that we are also completely disconnected from AJ's struggle, and when we are clued into the conflict and shown its resolution, it's all in the span of about 3 minutes and loses all emotional impact. Again, this was a conscious choice by the writers, but it doesn't change the fact that Roundup doesn't feel like an AJ story. So, this analysis begs the question, why isn't Applejack given more character growth? The writers give her things to do, apparently, but rarely anything that provides the audience with more information about her character. And this takes us back to my initial point. Applejack's character, as it stands, has already been completely explored. Allow me to explain by providing a basic breakdown of the main six and what aspects of their character can be explored and developed. As a fish-out-of-water main protagonist, Twilight Sparkle gets to learn new things about the workings of Ponyville to allow the viewer to also gain the same understandings. Things like Winter Wrap-Up Day, the Sonic Rain Boom, things that we would be left to ponder the workings of as an audience, Twilight Sparkle allows us to learn through her. She also has aspirations to explore, her desire to always continue learning and impress her teacher, Princess Celestia. Twilight also has a weakness, namely her paranoia, that she has to work to overcome. All these aspects of her character can be explored and allow us to learn more about her. Rainbow Dash has aspirations of proving she's the fastest flyer in Equestria, as well as joining the Wonderbolts. She also has a weakness of being overly boastful and a tendency to judge others. Rarity has aspirations of becoming successful with her fashion designs and to join the ranks of the Canterlot Elite. She also has the weakness of being rather vain.
You can't wear this old thing.
While neither Fluttershy or Pinkie Pie technically have aspirations or completely clear goals they want to accomplish or places they want to go, they supplement that with what I'd call character gimmicks. Fluttershy's trademark shyness allows her to be put into situations where her timidness can work as a weakness that she needs to overcome or as a comedic device. Pinkie Pie, on the other hand, works as a wild card of sorts. Her random personality and penchant to break the fourth wall allow her to be dropped into whatever situation the writers feel like throwing out of left field. Her charm comes from her ability to be so random and unpredictable. When Pinkie Pie's on screen, you never really know what's going to happen. Now, with all that we've just established, characters having aspirations, weaknesses, gimmicks, goals, where does Applejack fall on this list? Well, I can safely say Applejack has zero ambition. Her life was everything she wanted it to be as soon as she got her cutie mark. All that she's ever strived for was working in the fields of Sweet Apple Acres, and she's been doing that ever since she was a filly. It's hard for a character to have ambitions or goals when they're exactly where they want to be in life. One could make the argument that AJ has aspirations to become in first place in all of Equestria's rodeo competitions, but that wasn't really an established character trait, more of a plot point brought up by the last roundup. It's never been mentioned before that episode, and it's never been mentioned again, so one can assume it wasn't a permanent character trait, but just a convenient plot point. How about a gimmick? Well, Applejack's Southern. She likes apples. That's about it. There's a reason why all the fan-made works focus solely on her apple obsession and Southern stereotypes. That's literally all they have to work with. Applejack is probably the most straight shooter out of the entire main cast, so unlike someone like Pinkie Pie, the writers and fans can't really have her do things out of left field. Because even though her character is limited, she still has a logical character profile. Which leaves us with weaknesses. And yes, AJ does have a weakness, namely her stubbornness. And what do you know? AJ's two best outings, Applebuck Season and Look Before You Sleep, both deal with her character weaknesses. The problem with Applejack is that this is literally the only character aspect that the writers can truly explore. And they've already done it. Twice. Doing so again would start to just feel redundant. And so, by a quarter way through Season 1, technically the 4th episode, Applejack's character was explored in its entirety. And until someone on the FIM writing staff decides to add more to her repertoire, whether it be a new gimmick, introduce some sort of further aspiration or desire for something more in life, she will always remain woefully underrepresented, simply because there's nowhere left for her to go.